cut the toe off. When you are queen, you will no longer need to go on foot.
Once upon a time, a girl yearned for the promise of beauty, but she was cursed to be the ugly stepsister. Emilie Blichfeldt's Ugly Stepsister isn't another glittering retelling of Cinderella. It's a grotesque inversion of it. Where Disney promised transformation through virtue and goodness, Blichfeldt offers decay, delusion, and the slow rot of self-erasure. Her film turns the fantasy of becoming beautiful into a body horror, a tale of a woman literally carving herself to fit a world that only loves her when she bleeds for it. Here, the glass slipper isn't a dream of escape, but a trap, and every cut, every mutilation becomes a step closer to the alleged belonging. The only spell at work here is self-destruction, and she casts it perfectly. In the world of Perrault and Disney, goodness glows, evil distorts, virtue is smooth and symmetrical, vice is painted in excess, too much color, too much laugh, too much woman. From Snow White's porcelain innocence to Cinderella's soft, fluttering grace, beauty always signals goodness. It's less a quality than a guarantee. Look perfect, and the world will assume your heart is too. The villains, meanwhile, are drawn to offend the eye. Sharp angles, heavy makeup, laughter that lingers too long. Both Disney and the old moralists use beauty as a shorthand for virtue, and ugliness as a warning. Disney's recent turns, including Wicked, show the studio knows the old formulas are cracking, though the revisions stop just short of questioning the beauty myth itself. Even the Grimm brothers, for all their blood and bluntness, told stories of punishment and reward, where a woman's worth was measured by how well she could please, obey, or fit in. These weren't just fairy tales. They were blueprints for belonging, maps to the narrow safety of acceptance. And then comes Elvira. She's not a villain or a moral lesson, but the aftertaste of all those centuries of instruction. If Disney taught us to see beauty as proof of goodness, the Ugly Stepsister asks what happens when someone believes that lesson and destroys herself trying to make it true. Elvira arrives at her new home in a buggy with a few old dresses and the naive belief that she might belong. Her stepfather and stepsister, Agnes, greet her with politeness that never softens into warmth. Agnes has beauty and the kind of confidence that comes from being admired. At first, Elvira's dreams still belong to the fairy tale. She imagines a future beside the prince. The blueprint for her Technicolor fantasies is a poetry book authored by the prince himself. But the reality offers no such mercy. Everything curdles into mockery, and every glance is a reminder of what she isn't. When her stepfather dies, the home's fragile order collapses. Then comes the announcement of the royal ball. To win the prince's gaze, Elvira begins to see herself as a flaw in need of correction.
And correction, in this world, is always surgical.
For decades, body horror has warned us that the pursuit of perfection demands a slow erasure of the self. The genre has always understood that the body isn't just a form. It's the first battleground for beauty, control, and identity. In The Substance, a woman creates a younger version of herself to remain desirable until her body mutinies against the fantasy that youth can be extracted without consequence. Starry Eyes turns ambition into ritual sacrifice, showing an actress who sheds her skin, literally for fame. In American Mary, cosmetic surgery becomes rebellion and revenge. The scalpel, both weapon and confession. Each of these films exposes how modern myths of beauty ask women to shape themselves into something consumable. The Ugly Stepsister carries that tradition back to the fairy tale. Elvira's body becomes the proof and the price of every fairy tale promise. That's true. But what if what's inside is already poisoned by everything society told you to be? The first alteration is the nose correction. The crude metal instruments look more like instruments of the forge than those of a surgeon's. Cold clanging of metal on bone, punctuated by Elvira's sharp screams. The regimen continues. The ballet, for Elvira, is not a dance of grace, but a study in mechanical discipline. It forces her already fragile frame into the narrow confines of feminine comportment. Then there's the grotesque thing, nestled within a small, ornate locket. This is the ultimate, sickening submission to the beauty myth. The parasite is the perfect symbol of how Elvira is eaten alive from the inside out to achieve external worth. The constant gurgling from her stomach is not only a reminder of the parasite's proliferation, but also the irreversible decay of the hosts. More excruciating things follow. The eyelash stitching. We are put in a position where we cannot escape, as a needle pierces the delicate skin of her eyelid. What the beauty archetype considers as a performance of flirtatious innocence is turned into a sign of mutilation and trauma. Agnes is the film's Cinderella, and she is not a passive innocent. When she is mistreated after her father's death, Agnes recognizes her natural beauty as a utilitarian tool, the only reliable currency she possesses to escape a life of poverty and abuse. She gives up a poor, true love because escape demands a profitable match. This calculated trait is the magic of this world. The maggots on the deceased father link to the silkworms, proving the beauty Agnes relies on is born of societal rot and filth. Eventually, Agnes becomes a woman performing perfection because society leaves her no other role. The prince, meanwhile, is hardly a prize. He's a hormonal caricature of desire, guided by gaze and instinct. At the ball, Elvira is finally perfect, catching the prince's eye for a moment. But then Agnes arrives, veiled, naturally luminous, and effortlessly steals his attention. The final test is the slipper, a cold, exacting mold. When Elvira seizes the second slipper and her foot refuses, the machinery of self-hatred reaches its inevitable conclusion. If the body cannot conform, it must be broken. This isn't about Agnes anymore. It's about forcing her body to fit the dimensions of a fantasy built for someone else. The failure of the entire endeavor remains as the violent antithesis to the fairy tale romance. Blichfeldt, however, doesn't leave us with Elvira's complete self-destruction. Alma, the younger sister and a compassionate observer like us, initiates cleansing, a literal purging of the toxic ideal. She no longer has to play the rigged game, and thus is set free from the patriarchal gaze. As the scavenging crows, agents of change and rebirth, snatch the tapeworm, Elvira begins a life outside the confines of the beauty myth.
Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity.
Once upon a time, a girl yearned for the promise of beauty. And she learned that the true curse, the true ugliness, was the story all along.